you a veteran air traveler, or are you just getting that first bite of the travel bug? Well, according to the International Air Transport Association, in 2024, air travel is at the all-time peak it has ever been, superseding what it was before COVID. And because of this, someone like me who's been to 25 countries over the last few years, I've taken, 40, 50, 60 flights, something like that. Like, we're talking Taylor Swift levels. So in this video, I want to go through my 5 unspoken rules of air travel. These are people who have done this a lot, done this over the years. We know what you should be doing or what shouldn't be doing. So whether you are someone who is new to air travel, or maybe you've just been committing some cardinal sins for the last few years, and you want to just take a little bit of a look into what you should be doing, this video is for you. So without further ado, let's just get into it. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Lifting Nomad. My name is Alex. And again, if you are new to the channel, all my content is about fitness, travel, a little bit of kind of the hybrid between the two. Well, let's just start this off with I think the most obvious number one of all time for air travel. It has got to be hygiene. When you go to the airport, when you step on the plane, you should be just coming out of a fresh, full shower in a very clean set of clothes, kind of no matter the excuse. Whether you're in a hostel and you have to hand wash everything you're wearing, maybe you're coming from home for the first time, maybe you're coming from a hotel where you can get dry cleaning, having a clean outfit going into an airplane is probably the best thing you can do for everyone else around you. Not only that, you're gonna be in that outfit for the foreseeable future. So if you're sitting in something that's got some swamp ass, maybe there's a little bit of stank going on, that is not something that's gonna be comfortable. You're not gonna feel good, you're gonna smell terrible, and anyone sitting beside you is not necessarily gonna have the most enjoyable experience. And whether you think you actually don't smell, a lot of that could be nose blind and it could be very, very bad. You just don't even realize. You're having a long layover. Many lounges do have showers in them now. I think it's a very appreciated perk when you do find a lounge where you can actually shower, maybe get a change of clothes and feel completely fresh before you get on that next flight. It feels so much better to have like that clean sort of energy going into it. Brush your teeth, have a shower, put on some fresh underwear, and you're cruising. You're cruising. A couple other things that maybe won't be so obvious with hygiene: go easy on the sprays. Things like deodorant or perfume or cologne can actually be very, very pungent when they're in an enclosed space like an airplane. So if you do overdo them, it can be very powerful, not just to other people, but to yourself. If you are doing like a travel pillow and your neck is like jammed up in that, now your travel pillow is gonna smell like that cologne forever. So take it from me, go easy on things that can have a very, very powerful smell. And finally, if you are someone who's going to take your shoes off, let the dogs out. Make sure you just at least spray them with Lysol before you get on the plane. That way, when you do take them off, it's not so bad. Me personally, if it's anywhere from like a 1 hour to 5 hour flight, I'm probably keeping my shoes on. But anything more than that, I think all bets are off. Like, sometimes shoes are off, socks are off, like really, really kind of whatever is going to make you the most comfortable, because that's going to be a long time in that chair. And ultimately, your comfort really is the most important. All right, number 2, and I really can't believe I actually have to talk about this, and it always blows my mind when I see it. You should be going to the bathroom before you get on the planes. It still to this day really shocks me when any flight like 3 hours or less, any grown adult should be able to hold it for a 3-hour flight. If you're going to the bathroom right before you step on that plane, which is what you should be doing, you should be fine until you get to your destination, all things considered. Only exception, maybe you had some absolutely gnarly airport Taco Bell or Chipotle that's doing a number on you, maybe, or you have like an extremely small bladder, let's say. But if you are someone who's prone to needing to go to the bathroom, you should be booking an aisle seat. Like, I don't understand why people feel the need to inconvenience everyone else just because you didn't plan ahead. Especially if it is a nighttime flight and maybe I'm napping in like the aisle seat and someone from the window needs to get out, then like all of us have to shuffle out, wake me up. It's just a disturbing thing. Like, I understand if you gotta go, you gotta go. But the amount of people I see going on a plane ride is disproportionate to the number of people that actually have bladder issues, have something that's gonna make them need to go every couple hours. If you're a grown adult, you should not be going to the bathroom on a 3-hour plane. You should be able to hold it. I mean, additionally to that, if you are gonna go the ballsy route of having Chipotle before a flight, pretty dangerous, because anyone downwind is gonna get absolutely blasted with the nuclear fumes. And, on top of that, like me personally, I will stay seated for like 5 to 6 hour flight, I will not get up. If it is an overnight flight especially, I will stay in that seat until I get to my destination. I will always go on a window seat if I'm flying at night. So I think it's just, it's a fair expectation that other people do their part. Go to the bathroom before. You're an adult. Enough said. Now you're on the plane. Let's talk about number 3, the unspoken seat rules. Now, this is pretty generally accepted about where you're picking, whether that's the aisle, the middle, or the window seat. But keep in mind, some people aren't as well-versed maybe. So maybe you can't even figure out which one you should be sitting in. So I'm just going to kind of talk about my experience. And again, this is generally speaking of normal planes with a 3-seat aisle and then a 3-seat setup. Some of the larger planes like a 747 or like an A380 where it's maybe like 3 aisle 4 aisle 3. Generally, people would say if you're in economy, the best possible one is going to be the aisle seat in the middle 4. Reason being, it has the least likelihood of you getting disturbed by the person beside you, because theoretically there's only one person beside you who should be getting up. So it's the lowest possible chance of being disturbed. I typically recommend that if I'm choosing economy. If I'm in a standard 3 aisle 3 setup, really depends on where I'm going and how long the flight is. So let's talk about kind of the perks of each one. In the window seat first, you get a place to rest your head. So if it is an overnight flight and you're in economy, you can lean kind of against the wall, stretch out a little bit. I find you do actually get a little bit extra leg room by tucking your legs along the wall beside the seat. Additionally to that, you tend to get a little bit more storage because you can actually put stuff down beside your seat along the wall again. So if you have like some snacks or maybe a sweater that you wouldn't really know where to put it or have anywhere to put it, you can actually do that and get a little bit more space. You also get the power of having control over the window shade. So you can you can leave it open, you can close it. General etiquette, if it is an overnight flight, you should be closing it. People are probably going to try and sleep. Close the shade, turn your light off. Pretty obvious. Middle seat. Middle seat, it sucks. There's really no way around it. Unless you got auto assigned to a middle seat, you should not be choosing a middle seat for really any reason. I can't think of why you'd want one. You don't get any benefit to it. The kind of unspoken rule is if the person in the middle seat is there, they do get both armrests beside them to try and compensate for the fact they don't get the extra leg room, they don't get the wall. But really, you shouldn't be choosing a middle seat. If you are traveling as a couple, strongly recommend getting the 2 aisles beside each other. You're gonna have both a little bit more space. You don't need to be like rubbing up against each other for the whole flight. There's no sneaky business going on underneath the blankets. There's people around you. You shouldn't be doing that anyways. So if you are going to get up to something mischievous, maybe, I don't know, fly private or go to like first class and go to the galley or something like that. I don't know. Don't do that next to me. Finally, the aisle, you get the extra leg room because you can obviously like stretch your foot out and kind of along the side into the aisle. You also get the priority to the bathroom. So like I mentioned earlier, if you are someone who's prone to needing to go on planes, you should be picking the aisle. Doesn't really cost that much more to select your seat. It's usually like $10 to $20 to pick like one of the back rows and then choose your seat. Doesn't really change how quickly you get off the plane. Like ultimately between the first row and maybe the last row, it's like, let's say 10 minutes maybe between that time. Like that's not really gonna change kind of how long your delay is gonna be or how long it's gonna take baggage. So I would always prefer choosing my seat over choosing like how far back on the plane I am. That's just kind of personal preference. Getting on earlier of the plane does tend to make sure you have room above you to put your bag, as I know more and more people are trying to squeeze as much space as they can out of those things. That's kind of a different conversation. I don't really like people who bring on more than they're allowed because then it takes the overhead space. You should be checking something if you are over the limit. But more and more airlines now are starting to charge for that privilege. So I think it will hopefully kind of even itself out in the future. So between the 3 seats, which one's the best? If I'm on an overnight flight and I do need to sleep, I will be up against the window. Most of the time, I do typically try to upgrade to premium economy. So I'm in a 2-person row instead of 3. That extra space makes a mountain of difference in your sleep quality when you're not like jammed up against the person beside you. I know it can be a little bit expensive depending on your price point and how much you make, how much money you make, but I always find premium economy to be worth it. If I can upgrade even to business class, this year I flew to Cairo, Egypt in business class in a lay flat bed, and it's kind of hard to go back to economy once you do fly in a bed up in the sky. So to each their own, but I do recommend the upgrade. Now, if it is a daytime flight, I will typically go aisle. Reason being, if I'm flying, let's say, back from Europe to North America, I don't want to fall asleep on that flight because then it does ultimately affect my jet lag and like how I'm able to sleep when I do get home. So I'll try and watch movies. I'll bring my Nintendo Switch. I'll try and like read a book or maybe like do some journaling, like something to keep myself awake. And I find if I am in the aisle seat, I don't sleep as well or as easily. So it just makes it a little bit easier to stay awake and get to the end of the flight. All right, number 4, we're gonna talk about food and beverage consumables on the plane. Wow, that was like my World of Warcraft coming back through there. First thing, I think everyone who flies should have a refillable water bottle that you fill in the airport. I can't remember the last time I was in an airport that didn't have a water filling station or somewhere that I could get water. If they don't have one, you can typically go to one of the bars and just ask them to fill up your water. And then you just have a reserve because oftentimes like during takeoff, it'll take like an hour before you can get water. And then even after service, it can be kind of a pain especially if you're on the inside to get some more water. So bring a refillable bottle, make sure it's topped up right before you get on the plane. Now let's talk about food a little bit. Planes are very small enclosed spaces. So if you have something that stinks, it's going to stink even worse, and it's probably going to make it worse for everyone else because they don't even potentially like your food or want to eat your food or are eating your food. So some of the obvious stuff like Brussels sprouts or egg sandwiches or really spicy food like typically like let's say like an Indian curry or something like that has a really pungent spice to it. It can be disturbing to other people, especially once you're done eating, if it's a package that can't be closed up and it's just kind of like lingering around your table until the garbage comes around. Kind of gross. If you do have to do that, just eat your food and like throw it out immediately, like go back to the galley and get rid of it just for the sake of everyone around you. Now, I will say for sure, airport snacks are definitely not the healthiest. I do often struggle trying to find decently healthy food in an airport. Now, that said, there is typically not too hard of a time to find things like sandwiches, maybe charcuterie, maybe some fruit, maybe some beef jerky, like things that are higher in protein and like decently healthy for you. It's not the best, but it is doable. Ideally, I'll have a decent meal in the lounge before I board and then try to bring some fairly healthy snacks onto the plane to keep me over until, if it's a short flight, until I get to where I'm going. If it's a longer flight, until dinner is served. And then I'll typically try to pick something with like chicken or higher in protein so that I can keep my gains. But usually my recipe when I get on board is a pretty good routine. 2 sleeping pills in the lounge, 2 drinks in the lounge, 1 drink when I get on board, and then 1 movie. And typically by that time it was an overnight flight, I'm getting groggy, I'm getting sleepy. I know generally a lot of people say don't drink like on or before flights. I think it's all part of the experience, kind of do how it feels for you. I don't really feel as groggy. I've done both. I've done like the raw dog of no drinking, and I've also done the one of doing it, and it doesn't really change kind of how I feel when I get there, except I do tend to sleep better. Finally, let's talk about the 5th unspoken rule about air travel. I actually think it's entering and exiting the plane. And I see a lot of people still struggling with this, and I get it if you're new, but you should be able to prepare a little bit ahead. I think you should plan ahead for what you're going to need at your seat, and that should be in the personal item that's going underneath your bag. There is almost no scenario where you should be going back up to the overhead compartments to get something out of your carry-on bag. It doesn't really make sense. You have lots of time in the airport. You're likely sitting at your gate for at least like 10 minutes up to a couple hours, where you have the time to like rearrange things, make sure you have your iPad, your sleeping mask, your neck pillow, like anything you're going to need in your seat, that should be on your person or in your personal item. And then in addition to that, I think you should obviously know your seat. So you're gonna need your boarding pass, you're gonna need your passport to get on the plane. Those 2 things, every single time you board a plane, you will need those things. And every single time I fly, I see people who don't have them by the time they get up to the desk. Get your passport, get your boarding pass, have them ready to give to the agent. And then finally, kind of a bit of a controversial thing is about switching seats. I've been asked over the years to switch for people so that their families can sit together. So like a husband and wife can sit together, or because they got separated at the desk. Ultimately, your lack of planning doesn't justify an emergency for me. And I will stand by this kind of to my dying breath. I think this is something that if they have not planned, they didn't book their seats, they didn't select their seats, that's ultimately not yours or my problem. I typically pay for the seat I want. If I'm in an aisle, I've picked that. If I'm in a window, I've picked that. If I'm in premium economy or first class, I've picked that. Now, with that being said, if someone does want to sit with their person who's been separated and they offer you a better seat, so if you're in the middle and they offer you an aisle or a window, I think that's a fair switch. If you're in like economy and they, beside their spouse or their kid or whatever, and they've offered you their premium economy or first class seat, that's also totally fair to move to a better seat. I just don't think there's any scenario where I would say yes to moving to a worse seat. And how do you handle it? Typically, I just say, I'm sorry, I selected this seat. This is the one I picked for a reason. Nothing else. Don't be rude, but at the same time, kick rocks. So that's gonna be the end of my video talking about the 5 unspoken rules of air travel. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Did I miss anything? Feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Always helps the algorithm. As always, my name is Alex. Welcome back to Lifting Nomad. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.